you're going to get to see a slideshow, so I'm going to do a little brief intro. The program you're about to see has been a project in the back of my mind even before I moved to back to this area. As time went on, I had an idea to call it Drive-In Miss Sandra, echoing the Drive-In Miss Daisy. But I figured if I wanted to stay in the Historical Society, I better not do that. However, when you listen to the program, there's music in the background. It is from the soundtrack of Drive-In Miss Daisy. My part tonight is to look back at Hiawassee during my childhood days. As Sandra said, I was 3 years old, so Hiawassee's the only place I ever remember growing up. Some of you will remember everything you're going to see tonight, and some of you newcomers will get to experience the town as it was in the 1960s and 1970s. It was a simpler time with lots of traffic, but nonetheless, it was a bustling little town. We had 2 grocery stores, 2 doctors, and no traffic lights. All the restaurants were locally owned, and the golden arches of McDonald's were something we'd never heard of before. I decided to focus on what I remember this evening. I know there were a lot of changes in businesses before, but this is what I remember. When I was old enough to drive, I remember on Friday and Saturday nights, our entertainment was riding up down Main Street. And if you were really proud of your vehicle, you would sit on your vehicle, and those people were called fender lizards. The nearest theater was the Hen Theater in Murphy, which was 30 minutes away, so most of our weekend nights were spent riding up down Main Street. So, if you will sit back in your 1976 Ford Pinto and turn your radio on, don't worry about buckling up your seatbelts, it's not the law in the 70s, and take a little ride down Main Street, Hiawassee. So I'm going to be running the projector too, so if somebody can help me with the lights. Okay, this was the B&T market. It was in the 70s and the 80s. And this was Underwood's gas station, which once was Shook's Gulf Station. And this The Antique Mall was the Hiawassee Elementary School. It was 1st through 7th grade, and then they changed it to 4th through the 7th grade later on. This was the old B&T store before they moved across the road. Yeah, and that was Gucci Bells the whole time. And then Mr. Nichols, Ralph Nichols, moved in there and had Hiawassee Electric. And this building was once Smitty's restaurant, and later on it was the Hiawassee Laundromat. This changed a lot. This was the Western Auto, and at one time there was a laundromat over to the right. And this is before they moved out on Bell Creek. And then also Linda Hooper had a fabric and drapery store here. And this is one place that didn't change a lot at all. It was O'Quinn's before it was Noblets, but as you can see, the building is exactly the same. Even the doors are the same. And the signs are the same, right? Yeah. And this building was Hood and Piles, or Hiawassee Market. And Hiawassee Market was about the size of a convenience store now. And the Hiawassee Hardware, as you can tell now, it takes up a whole block. This was the early days, probably back in the 40s, when Mr. Paris opened up. And then he was a move-in, as Sandra said. And this was in the 70s, 60s and 70s. As you can see, it was about half that size. In this open area here, a hardware store, was Chastain Brothers gas station. I think they had a used car place too. And next door to it was a barber shop. And this, it's a little bit further to the left, was J.Y. Denton and Sons Insurance Company, and it was the old Sparks house, one of the older houses in town. Yeah, it was a beautiful house. And then over towards the other side of the gas station was the Hiawassee Motor Company. And the Sparks owned that, and I know Dr. Nicholson and Dr. Avery owned it at one time. And this was Lloyd's Friendly Furniture Store. And couldn't find out what businesses were in this, but we found out the Maxi Mart was there. I think it may have been in the 70s. Oh, she did? Okay. I know Estelle Sanders had one over by Lloyd's. And this was Anderson's department store. It was the only department store for miles for many eras. And this was Presley's general merchandise store, also called Big Four. And at one time it had housed 4 different businesses. And I remember it was very dark when I was a kid going in there. And then this was Texaco station. Looks like something out of a commercial, doesn't it? And this building was changed. I think they must have torn down the building. This was the old Hoover drugstore and later Charles Pharmacy. And this was Bank of Hiawassee. And this little place, it hadn't changed too much. This was Hogsmeade's used cars. So you can see there's a lovely gremlin in the front there. And this vacant lot was Johnny's Dairy Bar. It was a favorite turnaround place for the kids. I think this picture was taken during the 90s blizzard. And this was McConnell Baptist Church. You can see how it's grown. It's taken up like a whole block now. And part of their family center, to the left of it, was the old Mountain Regional Library. That was our main library. And I think it was once a school, wasn't it, Jerry? A primary school. Moved from somewhere else, right? Okay. And this, of course, was the Towns County High School. This is kind of an old picture too. It looks better there than it did then. And this, of course, today is the hospital. And this was known at the time as the Lee Happ Memorial Hospital. And this building not too long ago was Charles Pharmacy, Charles Nicholson's pharmacy. And the feed and farm place was a standard gas station owned by the Cunninghams. And that concludes my part of the program.
Thank you, Mary Ann, for that trip down memory lane. Did you recognize any of those places then and now? Or then and then? All right. So for part two, a look back at old Hiawassee. Now, what she did was not old Hiawassee. It was more modern Hiawassee. Well, anyhow, old Hiawassee. First of all, I want to thank Jason Edwards and Mary Ann McCall for all they did to help me prepare for this. Did all that techno stuff. Okay, now, the original post office for this area was known as Shady Grove. Shady Grove Post Office was up near Lower Hightower, Macedonia area. And the postmaster was John W. Grady, who operated Grady's Tan Yard near Macedonia Church. And as for the name Hiawassee, it didn't start in Georgia. Actually, in the 1840s, Hiawassee was over at Shooting Creek. Uh-huh. We didn't think it up. Hiawassee was over in North Carolina on Shooting Creek. And so when they made Towns County in 1856, they they bought from Kimbrough H. Watson so many acres, and it was at Watson's Crossroads. So in 1856, we were Watson's Crossroads, although that wasn't the post office. And Kimbrough H. Watson sold the land to Oliver Wiley, Franklin Foster, Richard Edmondson, Canon Stevens, and James Burt, justices of the new county, justices of the inferior court of the new county, Towns County, for the county site was what it was called. So what I'm trying to do tonight is talk about what was actually in the county site, the original plan for Hiawassee. It was okay, you just won't have to punch it.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. So the county surveyor was James Alston, and he laid out the county site. Now that one that's all white, that was the square. That was where the courthouse was to be. And it really was there until 1899. And it was divided out into lots. And lot number 1, right there, was the place where you remember Hooper's Drug Store. That was lot number 1. And so they've laid it out all around the square now, and when that was the county plan. So when they named it, they didn't know what they was going to name it just yet. For a while, like 3 months, it was Boston. You were Boston. Then, for a brief while, it was Hiawasseeville. Remember, Hiawassee was really over at Shooting Creek. And then they settled on Hiawassee. And depending on what page of the books, it was Hiwassee or Highwosse or later Hiawassee. So they had a plan. You know, if you fail to have a plan, you plan to fail. Well, they didn't plan to fail. They planned to grow and prosper, not to fail. Town lots were sold around the square. All those lots were sold. Number 1, that Hooper's Drug Store lot, was sold to Mr. Self. Lot number 3, right there, about where the city hall is, was sold to Mr. Stroud. And lot number 38 was sold to Samuel Y. Jamison. And I have seen tonight the original deed for lot number 38. It was 100 feet wide and 170 feet long, and it was bought by Samuel Y. Jamison for $68. And that lot, 68, is about, that's it, where did 68 go? 38. Is about where the Hiawassee Feed and Milling Company was behind the hardware. Out here in Barone Street. Okay, so you just saw the original plan, the plan they were going to grow into. By 1930, this is what they had grown into. They hadn't grown into their whole plan. You've got McConnell Church there. You've still got the square. I can hold that thing still. And so just a few of the squares were filled in. Just FYI, let me try it right here. Go back. So here is River Street. Here is Bell Street. And there goes Main Street. I can hold it still. Okay? And in 1940, right before the lake came. This is an aerial view of Hiawassee. And right here is the river. If you want to know where the river was and what the river was, there's the river. And here's Main Street. Going up Tater Ridge. And then the intersection up there goes to Hog Creek or toward Woods Grove. So, the square lot was where the courthouse was. This is not our Towns County courthouse. There's not a picture of it. But based on the descriptions in the courthouse books, we think it looked very similar to this. The only difference in the description of our courthouse and this Banks County courthouse from the 1850s is that the sides of our courthouse had fake columns. And this one doesn't. Is that right, Jason? Yep. Okay, so let's take a trip down Old Main Street. The first picture we've got on Old Main Street is there at that lot. That's the dog lot, if you catch the drift. The one with the chain link fence around it. That was later Johnny Allen's Dairy Bar. That was the Hooper Hotel. Look at the gables. Check out the horseshoes and the gables. See if you see them in any other places. Okay? Now let's go on this side of the square and look at Main Street that way. You see head on the Hooper Hotel and the house next door, which was the Johnson house. John M. Johnson lived there, and I know you probably can't see it, but on that right-hand window downstairs it says U.S. Post Office. So that picture's made about 1902, 3, 4, somewhere in there. I guess that's the crowd they had for Sunday dinner. Then, oh yeah, that was where Elders is. Then across the street, that Mary Ann showed you, I had to show this one too, because this one's made about 1910. It's the Big Four building because four businessmen had stores in there, otherwise known as the Big Four. Going on down, this is more modern times, but I just threw that in there so you could know where you're going. And that is France Hogsett's TV place and Burt Wood's store. Doug, you want to tell them anything about Burt Wood's store?
Well, Burt Wood's store was owned by Pope of Burt Wood. Pope was a World War I veteran. He died pretty early on. I think he'd been out between the store and the Masonic Lodge burning trash and died right there in the alley. But that was right next to the store building, right next door to the Masonic Lodge hall. France Hogsett TV show used to be Fred Frank's Cafe. And there's the lodge hall that was just, I guess, west of Burt Wood store. Burt Wood store, the building still exists. It was moved down just across the North Carolina line on 69 several years ago, when I guess Mr. Dick Parrish probably bought the lot. And it's been a vacant lot ever since.
Okay. Well, and check out the horseshoes and the gables.
Why would the gables do that?
The whole building's gone. They tore that down in the 60s and put up something cheap and crappy looking. I hate to say it, but in Towns County, that's what they do. Tear down something beautiful and put up something cheap. All right, so there's the lodge hall, and just FYI, right across the street is the Gaither and Lucille Wood house, but more on that later. And you notice the horseshoes are all going down, which I've always been told you're supposed to put the horseshoe going up. So the luck holds in. The other way, the luck falls out. All right, and then down next was the old Volley Benson house. also known as the Sparks House and later Denton Insurance Agency. All right, now you know where you are. You know next is today's post office. Turn around and go back up the street. That,
That's a little too far up the street.
well, that's the best I can do. That building right there that you can barely see is the closest picture we have of the Methodist Church in Hiawassee. That's the best picture we got. And so far, until somebody like Bear's Cousins comes loose, decides to turn loose the family stash of pictures, and we find it. So that's made from the Barong Street area, showing Johnny Nicholson holding her baby, her bouncing bundle of joy, Charles. And the two kiddos sitting there on the left is Doug and his best bud, Wallace Allen. All right, now let's check out River Street. River Street's the one at the light that goes up toward the bank and that way. It's called that because it went down and crossed the river. So we're standing at City Hall, looking up the way. This is the old high school that was built in 1902. This picture is made before 1922 because they tore it down in 1922. This was the T.J. Hooper store. And so now you got your bear. Oh, and right there is Doc Johnson's house, complete with the witch's hat on it. All right, now let's find another view. Going the other way. Okay, that one may be more familiar to you. You're at the light, and this is after Hooper's Drugstore had come to town. This is the old Bank of Hiawassee. But you probably remember all that is one business, because the drugstore bought the bank, and the bank moved over there, and they tore out the wall and made it one big business.
Where's the court come in?
Right here where you can barely see it is the Hiawassee Motor Company that you know as Red McKinney's store. Then here, then you have the Jess Gibson store and of course the courthouse. And I know you can't see it on this picture, but there shows the rock wall that was surrounding the square. Now, a little close-up of the bank. Now, one infamous Darren Osborne, when he saw that picture, he said, "Is that corn?" So in that lot where the motor company was, or the Red McKinney store, yeah, that's corn. So we studied, what in the world? What else could it be but a victory garden in World War I? And here's the motor company, and the motto says, "You wreck 'em, we come get 'em," or something. All right. Now, we're still on. Go back one. Which one's Mr. Farmer?
Right there.
That one?
Right there.
All right.
Winston and Laverne's dad, and the one.
Lynn Farmer over on the left, too.
One of them is Slim
Lynn
Henson.
Benson,
That one's Slim Henson.
that's Lynn Farmer, dad's brother was Lynn Farmer.
Okay.
And Mr.
Mr.
Sparks.
Sparks. I figured that was Mr. Sparks. All right, now we're still on River Street, and we've turned around, and the City Hall is on our left. We're looking at, well, it's obvious it's the Hooper House. But I want to show you the rock wall that was around the square. There you can see it really better. And thanks to Buzz Tatham for this picture. Buzz, who's that lady?
I think that's my mom.
All right. Okay, let's go to the lot that's the Hooper House. The fish pond is still there. And we're looking back up River Street, and you just see those businesses we named a while ago. The Jess Gibson store and so on, and I don't know what that little thing was. That's Sarah Hooper Carswell. All right, now going back down toward River Street, right there where that antique road equipment is, right there, and the porta potty, is where the courthouse was. In 1899, they built a new courthouse, and for whatever reason, they moved it to this lot. Oh, by the way, I had copies of this made for everybody. If you didn't get one, maybe there's some more over there. And so there's the courthouse that was built about 1900 and moved off the square. And right here is the old jail where the Garden Club building is. That was the old jail. All right, now behind the courthouse, the Hiawassee Academy had started in the late 1880s. This is the first original old building that was for the Hiawassee Academy. It's behind the courthouse, facing River Street. Look at those budding scholars hanging out the windows. Now, on the other side of the street, right across from that, was the Baptist Church. And here's a dynamic duo. Do you know who those dynamic duo might be? Ferdinando McConnell, who's this one.
George W. Truett.
And George W. Truett. That's the Truett and the McConnell and Truett McConnell College. The Truett and Truett Memorial Baptist Church at Hazel, and the McConnell and McConnell Memorial Baptist Church in Hiawassee. And they were the founders of the Hiawassee Academy. And that's the Baptist Church. That's the closest thing we got to a picture of the Baptist Church. Yeah. Okay. So across the street now, in the middle of all this education stuff, well, no, the school had moved away when they moved the jail. About 1915, this was the jail. It stood where the Garden Club building is. There you could have a perfect haunted Halloween. And the cages upstairs in the jail, Old Rock Jail, came out of that jail. Now, to the right of River Street, we have Hiawassee Elementary School and Hiawassee Primary School. This primary school is the building that was moved up beside McConnell and became the library. And not naming any names, but the president of the Historical Society is old enough to have gone to elementary school in that building.
Everybody in here that went to
If you went to school in that building, raise your hand. That's a lot.
Hey, Gary, one of the big old oak trees is still laying over there behind that house.
You're right.
Okay.
And Jerry, we had outdoor bathrooms at the back, and we had a line of faucets to drink from. And it was really something when you went from the little faucet to the bigger faucet to the bigger faucet to the bigger.
Just curious, were the faucets inside or outside?
Outside.
Okay. All right, now on River Street today, there's these two cabins. And you notice how they're identical. Well, when they had the Hiawassee Academy there in the 1880s and early 1900s, that street was lined with cabins. They were student housing. So those have been renovated and kept alive. All right, as we go on down River Street, go to the right side. That house is still there. It's the Fred Gibson house. And River Street then went on down to the river, crossed over. The bridge that it was there was the Hedden Bridge. And that mountain that's right over the way is Hedden Mountain. And the Sellers lived over that way in the old days. And when the Towns County Herald came out, there would be Fodder Creek News, Hog Creek News, Bell Creek News, and Louise Collins would write a column called News from the Sunny Side of Town. That over there is town. It's the city limits, isn't it, Liz?
Yes, sir.
Though they have to row a boat or go the long way around to get to the city. Okay? So that's how Sunnyside got its name. She wrote News from the Sunny Side of Town. All right, now let's go to McConnell Street. I named it that because that's what it should be. I'm hurrying as fast as I can. I always wanted to do this program. So, McConnell Street. That is the corner of the porch of the Old Rock Jail. Notice that the Old Rock Jail had a raised yard with a brick wall with the grapevine and mortar. This is Mary Jane Henson, and I don't know who the guy is, but they're standing in front of the jail. And the reason for the picture is I'm trying to show you McConnell Street. That's the back of present-day City Hall. That's a house over there. That car is on Barone Street. Since they'd already moved the courthouse off the square and abandoned that little plan right there, when they built the jail, they put that raised yard there, which would have been in the street, but they had already abandoned that part of it and started building houses down in here. A.B. Green House, Thea Gibson House, other houses, willy-nilly, without regard to the plan. Okay, so we go up that street. Today the sign calls this Mathis Way. But according to the plan of Hiawassee, that street goes straight through the bank and up. However, when the church was built, they must have dragged the street over closer so the church could be on the street. And they call that Church Street now, but it's really McConnell Street that's been dragged over there. Because the McConnells live there. That's why I'm calling it McConnell Street. And that is Ferd McConnell and his mother, Jane Christine Jameson McConnell. And so imagine you're right in the middle of the bank, looking toward the church. This is about 1910, the baseball team, and there's the house, and there goes the road. And then 1939 came the church. Okay, McConnell Street. That list in the city council doesn't know that it's a street.
We're gonna change the name.
All right, Frank Street. Who in the world were the Franks? The Franks came here about 1900. Like so many people moved in to bring their kids to go to school. One of the Franks became a lawyer. They were good people. And the Ingalls parking lot was generally known as the Franks Field. And that house near there is still a Frank's house, I think. And the first original old jail in the 1850s, 60s, 70s, 80s was over there at what was called the Frank's Field. And so, where is Frank Street? I'm standing with, is that Complete Cash? Title Poem, whatever it is, on the left. Ingalls on the right. There's the post office. There goes Frank Street, which is no more. Poor street. They did not go with a plan. Now let's look the other way. Here is Frank Street. Frank Street now has a four-way stop there. Probably most people wouldn't even know it was Frank Street unless the four-way stop had not come to town. So notice Frank Street then went, according to the plan, through the Bank of Hiawassee and through McConnell Church.
That's the only street around. It's one block long.
Well, it's really more than that. It just goes through the church and through the bank. There it goes down through the church, and it comes out over here. Well, it comes out over the back of the hospital, yes. Okay, so there's Frank Street. It's gone with the wind. Except for the one block. Well, yeah, the one block. All right, Barone Street. That's Barone Street out there. Now, You are lucky. Nobody has ever seen this picture before. It's Barone Street going that way. But the picture's made from the square. And this is today's Hooper House. You can see the elementary school down River Street. That's the elementary school. But here is a building you've never seen before. It was known as the Double Barrel Store because it had 2 stores in it. But the one on the left was the drugstore. And it's older than the Hooper drugstore. It was actually Dr. Johnson's drugstore when it started. Then the Hoopers came, and so that's where the original, that's the Hooper drugstore. And this house right here, where the Hooper house is now, was called the Aunt Lou Brown house. And Doug's father, Homer Nicholson, boarded in there with some friends when he went to school. And they told about the rats running at night, right? Well, it was Hiram Franklin Brown who moved down from the river. It was the Brick House Browns. He moved down from the river, and his wife was named, his second wife was named Lou, and they built that basically to get their kids educated in town and to rent out rooms.
Is that the Frank Riley's Brown?
Yes, this is Frank Riley's Browns. Yes. Just showing you more views of it. And there's the fish pond showing before the fish pond before the Hooper house. And this is way back in the day, and you see a power pole. This is before the lake. Yes, there was electricity before the lake. It came from the Hedden Mill, right down the way at the river, and it was just in Hiawassee, and not everybody had it, and it wasn't 24/7 electricity. And there's another close-up of the house and the fish pond. Now, going that way, I put this in there just so you know which way you're going. The Hiawassee Milling Company, Milling and Feed Company, otherwise known as C.L. Young. It's partly still there. Going on down a little further, we come to the Dr. William Turner Kinsey house. That was formerly the Sutton house. You see any architectural? Bart Lockerbie was the builder. Then we go a little bit further on down behind the hardware house to the Kitty McConnell Barone Memorial Hall. And Jessie Miles Barone married Kitty McConnell, sister to Ferd McConnell, and that was their house. But she died, he remarried, and his new wife, he built her a new house. The Barone house up there behind Dairy Queen, yeah. The big, nice mansion, wonderful house. So they moved, and he gave the school that for a girls' dormitory. Homer Nicholson moved into this after the lake came, when they came to town, and in preparation for building their house, this was the little house. And I spent many nights in that little house when my Aunt Ella lived there. I just was showing you that. It's still there, so you can get a bearing of where you are. Okay. Now, Lee Street. What? There's a Lee Street? Do you know Lee Street? There's the sign. It's properly marked. The courthouse is on the right, the tag office on the left. Let's go down Lee Street. Nice street. Tag office on the left, the Hooper Place on the right. Let's go to where it crosses over River Street. The plan was realized, wasn't it? Oh, go back. That's behind the hardware. So there were houses down through there. I remember visiting Mom and Papa Lee that lived down in there. All right, on up high behind the hardware was the Pence Birch house, and later on the Leonard Birch house. And that's hardware did that. Okay, Lee Street. Rest in peace, I guess. All right, Wood Street. You know where Wood Street is? It's on the plans. Here's Wood Street. That's the Wood house. It was Gaither Wood and Lucille Burns Wood house. And that little part is the Masonic Lodge porch sticking out. So now you know where it is. It's at the sign of the Ingalls. So if we look that way, the Lodge Hall on the right, Ingalls on the left, there goes Wood Street into oblivion. All right, now let's turn the other way. All right, we have Victoria's Attic on the left, Hardware on the right. There goes Wood Street into oblivion, decimated by the hardware.
The hardware gravel pit.
What?
The hardware store's gravel pit.
All right, let's go to Bell Street. We're coming from Upper Bell, down by the Cordy Woods place, and we're coming into town. We've just crossed the four-way intersection there at Frank Street, and on the right, where Title Pond, or whatever that is.
Battle Pond or something.
Okay, it was this house. It was built in the 1880s as the Dr. W.H. McClure house. They left here and went to Westminster, South Carolina, and the house changed ownership until maybe you remember it as where the telephone exchange was. That was where the telephone exchange was. When Standard Phone came to town, that's where their office was. All right. Then we go down to the next house. That's the W.G. Burns house, the Van Burns house, and they are making music. See the band hanging out on the porch? And so that's the W.G. Burns house that was eventually bought by the Presleys, and it looks like it has been added onto. And then next door to it was the Big Four building, which the Presleys owned too. So I'm just putting that there to show you the relationship. Now we cross Main Street and we get to this building. It was originally the Twig store, but in your lifetime you probably remember it as what?
Right Duckworth.
The Duckworth store. The Duckworth store. And the Western Auto. Yes, and the Western Auto. Now, right here, it's hard to see, but there's the phone booth. That's the phone booth.
Not phone booth. Still had it. Need phone booth.
And right here, this little shoebox building, Sandra, you can't tell. Who knows what that little shoebox building is? It's right on the square. It's very important.
Harrison Barrett's store?
No, that's on the street over there.
Cab stand, wasn't it, Jerry?
What?
Cab stand?
That is a taxi stand. All right, bonus question. Who can name the taxi driver?
Robert Pearl.
Rob Burrow. All right, going on down Bell Street, we come to the United States Post Office. That building is still there, and next to it was J.Y. Denton and Son Insurance Agent. The little library, they moved it up. Oh, there was a little library in there, but I don't know about it. I've heard about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one time it was a laundromat. Mm-hmm. So there we go. There is old Hiawassee that you do not even have a memory of. Now, when the lake came, the newspaper had an article about would Hiawassee keep on doing business at the same old stand, that the lake was coming into the town and the town would just dry up and blow away. Where in Hiawassee is the lake? Where in the city limits is the lake? It's all over the place. You know where United Community Bank is? It's sitting on part of the lake. When they built the lake, I mean, when they bought that land, whoever owned it had filled in and filled in and filled in and filled in. That's the lake where the bank is. Ross Brown always said when they built the lake, those girls in there will go to Flesh to Commode and pull up a cart. There at the train station in town, at the insurance agency, that's the lake. They filled in those places, that real estate and wherever, that's the lake. Oh, back in the day where Ingalls is and all that land where the bank is and everything, all that was fields. I remember cows and stuff in there. That was just country. All right. Well, anyhow, one time I saw Reach a Song, and there was a guy in there that said, you got to know where you came from. If you don't know where you came from, it's going to be twice as hard to get to where you're going. So now you know where you came from. I'm also reminded of another one of my favorite quotes from the Bible. Without a vision, the people perish. Without a vision, the people perish. I was recently flattered to be called to be on my planning committee to examine possibilities for the future of the city of Hiawassee. And now I would like to invite our mayor, Liz Ordiales, to come and give just a brief overview of some of the strategic plan or vision for our future. Hi.
Can we get lights too?
That was great. All right, I gotta tell you the truth, I have a little crush on Jerry. That's the way that rolls. Anyway, we were fortunate enough in 2016 to apply for a grant with the Appalachian Regional Commission, and they granted us $30,000 to go out and do this plan. So what we wanted to make sure is that we, number one, we gave them strict directions, which is leave everything historical, no tear down, build anything new, nothing. Keep it as much as possible, and involve as many people as possible. So on the next slide, you'll see everybody who was involved in that those meetings. Jerry and Jason were there, Mr. Nicholson, well, there's the whole list. Mr. Barong, a bunch of people, Dan Paris, Grace Howard from Hamilton Gardens. All of those folks were there. So we had 7 one-on-one interviews, one of them with the great Soul Commissioner of Towns County, Mr. Cliff Bradshaw. We had one-on-one interviews with historians. Andrea Gibby came over. We had 7 focus groups that consisted of downtown business owners, City of Hiawassee employees, Young Harris, Towns County, state officials, real estate professionals. We tried to get everybody involved as much as possible. We had a town hall meeting right here, and there were over 60 people that came to the meeting, so we got a lot of very good input on what people wanted. We didn't know what it is. We wanted to keep small. We wanted to keep history. We really didn't know what direction to go. So Joan Crothers, of course, was there because she is the queen of the square. So this is what came out of it, and this is the project. And if you flip through these pages, you'll see a few pictures that we're going to go over in a minute. But it basically goes through all the different things that they felt, or that the people of Hiawassee who attended wanted. It was a great project. Okay. So just like the plan, right?
Yeah.
They came in and they said, this is what we think you should target to be your downtown area. And if you look at there, it starts, it's a little bigger than this, but we've grown a little bit. So it basically starts, where's your pointer? So here's the square. So it goes all the way down to here, just past Dr. Joey's office. And up here, right to just past the Ingalls on that side. That's what they felt would be the proper downtown of Hiawassee. So based on that, we told them, this is what's working well, this is what we want to continue to keep working well. A strong sense of community, small town feel, the town square, everybody wanted to do a lot with the town square, and we've tried to, make that happen. And then make sure that we keep up with the beautiful surroundings, the lake, the mountains, the trails. Keep all that intact. So here's a few examples of what they came back with. Oh, sorry. The priority areas, quality of life, number one. And this is in order. Community identity, keeping our historic downtown or revitalizing it. Of course, the town square. Economic development and workforce, and then transportation. And they all kind of go together. So they kind of intermingle pretty well. So here's what they came up with. The possibilities of existing historic buildings to help us keep what we've got. So we got the Old Rock Jail, of course. They found this to be a historic building over here. Jerry, what's that?
I'm not sure.
Jerry?
I'm really not sure.
It's Farmers Insurance. It's right here on the square.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right. There are those nice little brick cabins right here on the square as well. McConnell Baptist Church, of course, the bank, my favorite, the Old Rock Jail, and then the hospital that was done. So the plan looks like this. It identified a possibility, like here, public art, and it gave us a goal, and it said this is what we want this to consist of. So create public art by placing murals, cleaning up the different areas, using Young Harris College as a local partner, and then how long it would take, long-term, short-term, who would lead those efforts, who our partners would be, where we're going to get the money, and what steps we have to take to make that happen. So there's 27 of those in this book with all of those details. We've already done 8 of them. So we're moving along. Here's a before and after. So there's a before of, there's Victoria's Attic, the Delco Energy Building, my favorite building. It's a great building. What was there at one time?
Evelyn Crosby had a fabric store there. Dr. Waldridge was there.
There's a pool hall there.
Oh, how come Roger remembers the pool hall? So the pool hall was Victoria's Attic, Roger.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, sir.
upstairs in that building, on the left side, right there, was Dr. Waller's dental office. On the other side was the city hall at that time, in one room.
Really?
Jimmy Brown.
When Jimmy Brown was mayor. Downstairs, on one side was the furniture, that was the fabric shop, I believe that's still standard. And on that side was George Waller Jr.'s furniture store.
Very
A
cool.
lot of people were in there.
Yes. And if you look at that building the next time you're by there, there's 3 doors. So this door goes over here, this door comes to here, and this one goes straight upstairs. And I think at one point that must have been an apartment, because if you go up there, it's still laid out like an apartment. So there's the before, and here of course is the next building, and there's what their rendition would be of what could happen after. Redoing that building altogether, maybe making it a restaurant, putting some kind of artwork here on this wall, putting trees, expanding the sidewalks a little bit. So there's a whole lot of that in this presentation. Here's another one, of course, the Old Rock Jail, which we know we just love the Old Rock Jail, and the cabins, and then all of the other historical properties that are there. And again, the number one focus is we're tearing nothing down. The Barong House is listed on there as one of the properties that we would love to have. Recognizing the Unicoi Highway at Lloyd's Landing. We're working on that. All of those require a lot of approval from TVA and DNR and all those other letters that are impossible to work with, EMC, all of that. But we've got verbal agreement from everybody to move on with Lloyd's Landing. And what we want to do there is make it like in one corner where it's very shallow, have like a little kids playground area, like a fort where you can jump in the water and come back out. In the middle, do a kayak ramp, so you can sit on your kayak and kind of push off. It's got little rollers. And then give the Unicoi Parkway its tribute by making it a Unicoi Plaza. Maybe putting a couple of fishing piers out there, some picnic tables, something nice that everybody can come out and just enjoy. Okay. Historic vitalization and then doing our of course, the library, and there it is again. We're fond of the Old Rock Jail a little bit. Okay, keep going on that one. There's the before, Victoria's Attic. And notice the architecture on the next one stays the same. Everything in this plan stays the same, but it shows what could happen there. You could have a restaurant there. Those flower beds, if you go back one more. No problem, keep going back. There, oh, you're going the wrong way. No. Reverse. Anyway, the flower beds, maintaining as much as we can exactly like it is. And just go real fast, right? One more. Two more. Okay, so there we go. See, it's keeping the same form here, the same flower beds up front. Here it added a little wider median. And there's a lot of things on that plan that were just their creative, look at things. We're not gonna do parallel parking on the square. I mean, on the Main Street, what are we, crazy? That would be horrible. But that's an option that they threw out. Not a very good option, but certainly something that they threw out there that we could look at. So that's a proposed from the, leaving it the same, yet making it an improvement. The Ingalls, right? The Ingalls is, they looked at that and they said, look at all that green space right there that's kind of dead and unused. There's their rendition of the Ingalls. Now, a lot of those take a little bit longer time because you have to contact these are personally owned businesses and it's going to require them to put a little bit of money in. So we've had many conversations with Ingalls. The first thing they said is forget the big trees. Because that way you can't see the Ingalls. So we said, okay, so make them little trees. And they said, okay, well, we're working towards that. So we're working towards all of these projects that you see here. Next. There's the design implement. This is if you're standing on, I'm going to be Jerry. If you're standing right back here on Barong Street, looking towards Bell Street, there's the Jeremy Hogshead Insurance over here. This is the square right here. So that's the way it looks like now. And this is what they propose that we make it look. Add like bump outs here. Because right now, if you come down this way from Barong Street to here, that stop sign is almost in the middle of the street. So a whole lot of people just kind of come in through here and go like that, right next to the curve. So this would just make sense to make it a sidewalk, put a crosswalk here, make these medians a little bigger. They're called bump outs. Learned a lot since I've been in this job. Next, you'll see this is the back of the square. There's that wall that we're talking about, right? That's the only part of the wall that's left. So they said, well, we can get rid of the wall. It's like, no, negative. We said we're getting rid of nothing, right? So this is their recommendation for that. There we go. So make a sidewalk go all the way around the square and leave that there. And of course, all of that has to be approved by the Queen of the Square. And that, go back one more, Marianne, sorry. See here how if you come down this way, there's the stop sign. That's where it is right now. A lot of people just come this way because they can. So this would put nice trees, nice landscaping, and a normal street to go through. Okay, next. This is my favorite, the post office. The post office is owned by Alvin Gibson. God, do I sound like Jerry? Tell me I sound like Jerry. Alvin Gibson owns the post office. He was my very first person to call. I said, Mr. Gibson, please come talk to me about this strategic plan. And he came up, he lives in Gainesville, and I showed him the plan. And I said, look, this is what they would like to do to the post office. That's their rendition in the book for the post office. So I showed it to him and he said, that looks pretty good, but I think I can beat that. I said, have at it. And then this is what we got. Now, what we did with the post office is at one of our work sessions, we had different color palettes. He said, you pick the colors, you do it. You just let me know and I'll get it done. So we had different buckets and people picked what color scheme they liked. That's the one that won. So he rocked the columns, which I think looks really good. It fits right into what we've got here, all these rock columns. And then the white and blue sort of, USPS. And the next thing is the landscape here. The post office was going to do that, but they ran out of time. But that landscape will be coming up hopefully for next year.
What about a roof?
Yeah, well, let's not beat up on him too much. Yes, we already asked for it. He said yes, we were going to do the roof. So that's kind of the plan. If this strategic plan is online, so if you want to see it, you just go to our website and ask to see the strategic plan, and it'll all of the pages will come up. So another thing we're doing right now is, another thing we mentioned is the military and how very proud we are of our military people here. So on the square, hopefully in the next 3 weeks, I've had a hard time getting pictures of everybody, but we're going to honor 7 active military folks and 7 retired from the area. and they'll have banners on the square. There's 5 poles on the square, 5 black ones, and then the 2 back for the stage. So we'll have 14 banners on the square that'll say Hometown Hero. It's a giant flag, and it's got their picture in the middle and what branch they served in. Now, we are not doing that alone. You know, our budgets are like this big. So we've reached out to our community to help us with that. And the Lake Chautauqua Rotary Club, the sexy bald guy over there, Jerry Gutenstein, has stepped up, and they're gonna pay for the banners. So I've taken all the pictures, I've put it all together. We're gonna put the banners up hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And one other thing that we're just adding, as a matter of fact, I'm picking it up tomorrow, is a mailbox for the square. So if you have a flag that is tattered or torn, you can deposit it in that mailbox on the square. And we're trying to figure out who, either the VFW, the Boy Scouts, the American Legion, will come and retrieve them once a week, once a month, whatever, and then properly dispose of them. So you'll see that mailbox hopefully tomorrow or the next day out there. So that's kind of where we're headed, and feel free to take a look at this online. It's a nice plan, it's a good plan, and I think it's in line with what everybody wants us to do.
Thank you. So there you have it. Hiawassee, a retro look, Hiawassee, the distant past, and Hiawassee, the future.